Okay? So remember the model, right? If you haven't seen the previous videos, this is you. In this model, you are the conscious observer or the conscious awareness, and you have this influence on this identity manifold. This is a conceptual framework for understanding how you can start to reshape your reality today. Okay? And in the identity manifold, you have something called the identity nucleus. This is where all of your core beliefs exist. Everything fundamental to you. This should be as unchanging as possible, okay, through many different seasons. And of course, you have your the rest of the layers, the identity manifold, and this represents a hypothetical system that exists in a multi-dimensional space, and each of those variables that creates this configuration represents some mapping to a domain of reality. So if this is your reality state and you're maybe experiencing something unpleasant, right? Then it means, in this model, it means that you have developed an identity configuration that continues to interact with reality and is giving you the high likelihood of continuing to get the same outcome. Now, there are some experiences in reality that are just out of our control, but for the most part, the way we interact with our identity is how we are able to perceive and filter out and even produce a certain outcome in reality. Okay? So the identity layers are an attempt for the conscious awareness to interact with the reality space around it. Does that make sense so far? It's a model, it's a framework, right? So what this means is, if you, the conscious observer on the world around you, can manipulate your identity manifold, right, which represents the controller, right? If you can manipulate your identity manifold, you can reconfigure your reality, and of course, reality will give you, the unconscious awareness or observer, a feedback. And of course, you take that and you say, I am going to update or upgrade my identity, right? And we do this unconsciously, we do this consciously, right? And sometimes, of course, missing in this is the loop, right? Sometimes the identity will go right to reshaping the manifold, right, of the identity structure that you're using to manipulate reality. And this might sound crazy at first, but if you stay with me, it gets interesting. The kinds of things we can use the ways we can manipulate this framework to understand reality so we can update ourselves, right? So if you look at this layer, the way I'm seeing this, right, if each of these layers represents some mapping to reality, then if I can figure out, right, two things come to mind. If I'm having a problem in reality in what is known, so these are known domains of reality. What is a domain? A domain could be the roles you play in society, the external parts that you're supposed to play on the world stage, right? Whether it's as a parent, as a son, as a father, right? As an employee, as a business owner. Maybe it's the material values you have. Maybe it's your professional skills, your financial skills. Everything that is representative of an external output that you either receive or give out is representative of the layer of reality. So, what does that tell us? Well, we can, if we're having an unpleasant experience with reality, if we loosen some of the fabrics, right, of the identity construct, the superstructure, as you will, of this identity manifold, then you can begin to either become blind to some of the fabrics of reality, or weaken your connection to those layers of reality so you don't even experience them, or you experience them so minimally that they don't impact you as they will, right? Your sensation to those parts of reality are essentially either weakened or cut off, right? I'm trying to think of a really good example of this, because all of this is not planned. Okay, I'm not like thinking about. Don't have any kind of documentation anywhere that's telling me this. Right? These are things I've thought about throughout the day, right? And really think about how to make this a structured framework, right? I'm trying to think of an example, right? Let's say, for example, you start becoming a person who's open to opportunities, right? You're no longer this pessimistic perspective. You don't have this pessimistic identity layer that is so powerful and is filtering out your lived reality for your conscious awareness. No, you are manipulating the identity so that now you are more optimistic. You're more open to different opportunities. No longer do you see things the way people see them. Some people may see an abandoned warehouse. You come at it with a different lens and you say, you know what? I see a theater in there. Same object, but your lens has shifted. The identity through which you are seeing this could be as an architect, as a real estate investor, right? You're no longer looking at the real world the way everyone else does. Now you might get to a certain point in your life, right, where you now look at that, right, and everyone below, not below, let's not say below, because all humans are created equal, right? But let's say every single, let's say people in your previous class, let's put it this way, people in your previous group think, right, would see, maybe they're an investor class, would see that theater and see that abandoned building and see a theater, or see an apartment, right? But now, because of where your lens is shifted, you're filtering that out, because there's no point in you playing that game anymore. It's like Elon Musk trying to do that, pay attention to those finer details, right? Or Bill Gates, or I was just thinking of billionaires, right? Or any of these individuals, right? Their identity lens has shifted entirely, right? There are parts of reality that you're just completely oblivious to. You and I'm not saying that I've arrived or anything, but it's exciting to me, because the identity manifold, and this is probably a terrible diagram. Hopefully I can get some kind of real picture of what this looks like, right? But this can allow you to tweak how the conscious observer, curve. I have to use that word correctly. Curves the particular layers of the domain in focus for reality. You can go very deep into this, but because of the sake of the video and the length, I will keep this brief. And remember, we talked about unknown or emergent layers, right? This tells me that there are parts of reality, an infinite layer of reality, right, that is just waiting for someone to just develop a unique way of looking at the world, a unique identity, a unique layer, and begin to map virtually to this unrealized potential in this infinite space. We have a canvas around us of reality, right? And we have the potential to say, I want to see the world in a new way, in a way no one has ever seen it. I believe, for example, let's give you an example. I believe that a computer can exist, like this calculating machine, right? And I believe that we can be taking devices everywhere we go. You can start thinking about people who started to see the world differently, or architects who paint the sky with their visions of what the world can look like, right? All of these are unknown and emergent because previously they were not part of our experience, because no one had developed the identity layer of their identity superstructure to be able to see this thing into reality. So this reality field, let's call it that. It can also be called a reality fabric, but I'll call it a reality field for now, because a working title. This reality field, right, has an infinite amount of domains that are possible. And all of this compresses to give us the experience we're seeing in this model, right? It's still conceptual, very conceptual, right? And when a person, let's say, develops this new idea, right? It starts, it might start in the conscious awareness, take form in the identity manifold, and that particular identity maps to some layer of reality, and that field begins to form a potential, right? A potential domain that is added to the layer of experience, and it can register globally so that everyone can start to agree upon that this is what reality is, right? So it's pretty interesting. It's a way of understanding that the world around you is not as fixed as you think it is, right? Nothing says, there is no law that says that reality must be experienced a certain way, okay? Reality is what people perceive it as. If people can look at the same thing and see two different answers, right? And it's simply because the lens through which they are viewing it is being morphed. And I'm saying in this identity engineering framework that the type of identity you have, or the way you layer your identity, or peel back, or configure your identity, is really how you get to perceive or interact with your reality. And it's how you get the outcomes you desire. Just a framework, right? Just a conceptual framework, with some structure that I'm trying to put into place so that we can use it to interpret reality. And of course, never feel stuck, never feel hopeless, right? All of those things are things that if you feel that way, you are just strengthening a layer of your identity, and you're giving it a lot of weight, because the more weight that layer has, the sharper the connection to reality. And the sharper the connection to reality, the more likely the outcomes that you may not want, right? So we must be very careful. And I would like to talk about how to shape your identity in coming videos. So, of course, I appreciate you. Thank you for watching.